Hi, my name is Cami Drake and I'm a graduate student at Morningside College. I'm also a special education teacher for kindergarten, first, and second grade. The title of my report is Using a Repeated Reading Strategy to Increase Students' Oral Reading Rates. The problem in this report is that the Common Core state standards are ensuring that second graders meet certain criteria by the end of second grade. They need to read accurately and with correct rate and expression. And then by the end of third grade, if they're not proficient in reading, there's a law that's passed this year that says they may be retained just because of their reading. This topic is important to me because I am a special ed teacher. Most of my students struggle with reading, and I'm constantly looking for strategies to increase their fluency. The reason why it's important that students read proficiently is that 1 in 6 children who are not reading proficiently by third grade may not graduate on time or at all. If you are retained, I learned that you could have an increased risk of dropping out. You might feel like an outsider, be disengaged, and have behavioral problems. Students with reading difficulty usually struggle with fluency, and there's 4 components of fluency. That's automaticity, prosody, accuracy, and speed. I'm mostly focusing on speed in this report, and it's measured by oral reading rate. So past research shows that this strategy can be successful. In 2003, ATS conducted a study using this strategy. He used only 1 student with reading difficulty, and it was a 38-hour intervention. The baseline, the student was able to read 36 correct words per minute. After the intervention, they were able to read 51 correct words per minute. It was a successful strategy. However, it was a one-on-one intervention, and there was only 1 student. Kotwich and Cabana in 2010 compared repeated reading to the interval sprinting, and that's where you reread short passages over and over. They used 3 students, and they all had difficulty in reading. With the interval sprinting, they had an average of 186 correct words per minute, and with the repeated reading, they had an average of 169 correct words per minute. The interval sprinting was higher, but there was little difference between the methods, and the participants met the criterion for both procedures an equal number of times. In 2015, Guerin and Murphy conducted a study with 3 students, again with reading difficulty. It was 80 minutes a week for 7 weeks, so quite a lot intervention. The 3 students made a different kind of growth. The first one made 23 correct words per minute growth. The other one made 8. And the last one went down by 24 words a minute. But you should know that her accuracy did increase. So when you calculate this all, the average growth for these 3 students was 2.3 correct words per minute a week. And I learned through my research that typical growth is 0.32 correct words per week. So this study actually had 7 times more correct words per minute per week than typical growth. So it was successful. The objectives of this study, well, the purpose was to determine what impact this strategy, repeated reading, would have on oral reading rates for students that had difficulty in reading. But more specifically, I wanted to work with students that had IEP goals in reading. My study aimed at raising oral reading rates for students with these goals to help deter them from being retained in third grade. The hypothesis is that the repeated reading strategy would result in a statistically significant difference between the mean pretest scores and the post-test scores as measured by the Formative Assessment System for Teachers, which we call FAST. The independent variable was the repeated reading strategy. The dependent variable is oral reading rates. The possible impacts. This research can impact educators. I believe this strategy is good for students maybe first grade up to 8th grade or even beyond. So to know that this strategy actually does work will be good for educators above my level to use for fluency. But this impacts my work because I teach second grade reading intervention, and we measure them by the FAST Fluency Weekly. So I need to find a strategy that will help them read faster. So I conducted this study at the school that I work at. It's in central Iowa. There's 200 students in the school. 49% have free and reduced lunch, and it's 98% Caucasian. My sample size was bigger than those in the research articles that I shared earlier. It had 5. One was female and the rest were male. They were all low SES. They all had reading goals, IEP reading goals. They were all reading at least 1 year below grade level, and one student was reading 2 years below grade level. So I chose these students for my study because they were the lowest students in the grade, and as a special ed teacher, I work with the lowest students. For my materials, for the intervention, I used Read Naturally and a first grade level in the first month. We needed pencils, blue and red crayon, a manila folder, graphs, passages, multiple passages, and a timer. And I needed all those for each of the students. For the baseline and treatment scores, we used FAST. It's a website. It's called Second Grade Curriculum-Based Measurement Oral Reading Fluency, which I will call CBMR2. And I also use my MacBook Pro. For the procedure, I had them 5 days a week for 20 minutes for 5 weeks. The passages were read once, and then I timed them, and they graphed them using a blue crayon. That's called the cold timing. Then we read the passage up to 3 more times until they were reading fluently. Then they reread the passage, and we graphed above that bar line using a red crayon. This was just kind of for motivation. I also had to progress monitor them every Friday using the FAST site per state laws. So the procedure, I got the baseline data using FAST. I had to get onto the FAST site, put my credentials in, and time them per one minute. I had to do progress monitoring once a week, and then I also did the end treatment test, which was again the FAST. For data analysis, it was an ABA pre-test, treatment, post-test, single subject design. A statistical analysis was carried out using a dependent sample t-test to determine if there was a statistically significant difference between pre- and post-test means. The results of my study show that baseline scores range from 6 to 19 correct words per minute, with the mean being 11.4 and the standard deviation being 5.1. After the intervention, the treatment scores range from 18 to 31 correct words per minute, with the mean being 24 and the standard deviation being 5.4. This is a graph of each of my students, students 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The dark line shows the pre-test scores, and the lighter line shows the post-test scores, so you can see how each student grew. This is a table that just shows I had 5 students, their mean pre-test and post-test scores, their standard deviation, and the standard error. After I conducted a t-test, I found that there was a statistically significant difference in oral reading rate. Results indicated that the t equaled negative 12.86, which shows a meaningful difference between the pre-test and post-test phase of the intervention. Also, my p-value did equal less than 0.001. So my hypothesis was confirmed. This strategy did increase the oral reading rates. I want to add the theoretical framework behind this strategy. It is called automatic informational processing theory. It was developed in 1974 by LaBerge and Samuels. It uses 2 components, automaticity in word recognition and accurate word decoding. Basically what they're saying is that rereading a passage will train your brain to read with automaticity, just knowing the words, because when you're trying to decode words, you cannot comprehend as well. So kind of like learning how to type, you are training your brain to read by rereading and rereading so that your comprehension can improve. Implications for the study. In the classroom, this study just reinforces that this strategy can be used in the classroom to improve fluency. I can share this with my colleagues and show that the data does work. It's cost effective, easy to implement, and it doesn't use much training, and it does work. For students, this actually is an engaging strategy. When they get to self-graph and see how much faster they get, they really do enjoy it. Teachers, this just shows evidence to teachers that this is a sound strategy to use and it can help thwart the third grade retention. And lastly, could be used by parents. I mean, they can reread a story until their student can read, or their child can read the story with the correct accuracy. I just think that this is a great strategy for parents. Limitations and recommendations. My sample size, I had 5 students. For my recommendation for future research is to use have more students, have more participants, maybe 10. I would like to see more than 5. All of my participants had low SES as well as they were Caucasian. I would be interested to see a study that had different ethnicities, different SESs. So I would recommend a study that shows differences. Also, I feel like my intervention time was short. I had 5 days a week for 5 weeks, plus I had to do progress monitoring for 1.5 of those days. So my suggestion to future researchers would be to have more time. And lastly, how do I know that this study is the reason, or that this intervention is the reason why they grew? They also were getting their core instruction in their classroom, as well as getting special ed minutes with another special ed teacher. So I don't know if this was natural growth or my intervention really did work. So my recommendation for future researchers would be to try this during the summer. I would like to see if students would make this type of growth in the summer. Lastly, my hypothesis was confirmed. This is a strategy that will work for 2nd grade students with reading difficulty. What did I learn? In collaborations, we're always talking about ways to increase fluency. Now I actually do know that this strategy really does work. So I plan on sharing this with my colleagues. I learned that it does work. How do my results mesh with past research? Most past research does say that this strategy does work. So I've just learned that it does work, except for a little more research needs to be done on students with learning disabilities that I would like to see. And my results mesh with the automatic informational processing theory because it just shows that when you train your brain to reread and read with accuracy, that you become a better reader, and in turn you can read for meaning. So you'll be able to decode enough that you can learn things from reading, not just learn how to read. These are my references. And that's it.